Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Castriota, and welcome back to the Higher Ground podcast. Whether you're grinding through yet another job application, navigating a tough work environment, or just trying to level up your career, you've found your show. Each episode, I sit down with guests ranging from the C suite to folks just starting out in their career for honest, unfiltered conversations about interviewing, managing, and everything in between. No corporate spin, no polished PR answers, just real conversations, real stories from people who've been there. This is season 2, and I'm so glad you're here for it. A quick note, all opinions are our own and don't represent any current or past employers. And if this sounds like your kind of show, then please hit like and subscribe. And once again, thank you for joining us. And on to today's episode. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Higher Ground podcast. I have a special guest with us today. Joe Levens is joining us here from Long Island and transitioned out of IT into a whole new career. We're going to spend some time talking about that today. But why don't you introduce yourself, Joe, to our guests?
Okay, sure. Hi, I'm Joe. I had started working in IT after graduating from college, and the first job I had was very interesting. We built flight simulators for the Navy.
Cool.
And I was
Amazing.
on the software development team, and it was a very exciting job. And after about 2 years or so, interesting situation, not uncommon in the IT industry, the Navy came to us and said, "You did a great job. We love the simulators. At the moment, we don't need any more, but please don't lay off or let go any of your staff. You never know when we might need them," right? So we basically were like this, doing nothing, and I was 24 at the time. I had ants in my pants and I wanted to do stuff and I got bored. So I moved on, and wasn't the first time something like that happened. It happened a few times in my career. And I was in various IT jobs for over 30 years, I would say. Wow. It was a fairly satisfying job. It paid the bills. But, we're in the situation now, and we have been in them for about the last 20 years, where a lot of jobs are being offshored. And a lot of software development work now is no longer in the States. And it really made for a very stressful work environment for many people. And
Sure.
I had decided when I hit 58, I had decided I am no longer going to work at a job I do not like or that stresses me out too much. And so I ended up walking away from that line of work. And I said to myself, teaching at a college might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
So I started teaching at a college in Long Island, State College on Long Island, adjunct in IT, and I liked it very much. I'm still there. I also went for my MFA in creative writing at the same time from Stony Brook. And coincidentally, I was kind of lucky because COVID had just hit, and the MFA for creative writing at Stony Brook is actually not in Stony Brook. It's in Southampton and Manhattan. Okay. And I'm like right between them on Long Island. So that would have made for a very long commute. But
in either direction.
So COVID hit, and I basically got my MFA online for 2.5 years online, and they had an arrangement where, as you're going for your MFA, you can teach a class. I taught creative writing, undergrad at creative writing, and they were nice enough to keep me on board. So for the last 5 years or so,
that's great.
I've been doing adjunct professor work, IT at one state college, and creative writing at the other. I'm carrying 5 classes. This is spring break.
Oh, that's 5 classes. That's a full load. 5 classes.
It's a full load, but I like it, Tom.
Okay.
I like the work and I don't mind it,
No, at the end of the day, I think, it's funny at least when I started my career, it was all about make the monies, right? Get the kids through school, pay for the house, do all the things. And then as you start to advance, in, I don't know, maybe gray hair and in age, you start going like, what did I like doing? Because, I've had, like you, right, a number of different jobs, and it's, you get to a point in your career where it's like, well, when did I have the most fun?
Right.
Right. And what
Right.
did I enjoy the most? And I know you've had the Somerset Review it's a decade, right? Or is it
Right.
longer than a
I
decade?
run a literary magazine. It's called the Somerset Review. 24 years.
Oh my God, I was way off.
Yeah,
Sorry. I feel like I should know that, right?
that's what.
24
24
years.
years still going. We're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary next year. I don't know what we're going to do to celebrate. We'll have to do
Yeah.
something.
Ah,
But
that
yeah,
sounds great.
online. Yeah. Let me just put the adjunct thing and that whole work
Please.
in perspective. As you may know, the pay is much less than what I had been.
Just a little less than the IT professional gig, right?
Right. So at 58, I decided to make the switch. Fortunately, right, my wife has a public school teaching job on Long Island. Public
Yeah.
school teaching jobs on Long Island pay pretty well. So I had the luxury or the good fortune to do that, right? I could not have done that when I was younger. An adjunct job teaching at a college as compared to an IT manager, let's say,
Yeah.
you're talking like one quarter the
Of the
salary
compensation.
at
Yeah.
most. At most.
I'm glad you brought that up because I do think, especially for young folks today, the idea of being double income is almost mandatory. I
Yeah.
know what my daughter's looking for in terms of paying in rent on her, it's not small, and she's not in a luxury building in Manhattan. It's
Mhm.
a little place, and it's very expensive, and she's in healthcare, and it's super expensive. So you either need that partner income or a roommate or something to to have that kind of lifestyle. So I get
Yep.
it. And then you've got to get the kids through school. Same situation. We were just talking about that earlier. It's
That's
like
right.
kids
That's
got to
right.
go through college, and yeah, it's I think it's tough. It's very tough. But I do what I appreciate you sharing is you kind of had this longer trajectory in mind, right?
Right.
this side project of your passion, your writing passion
Hmm.
for many years, and then starting to think about, okay, where do I want to be down the road? Because I'm
Hmm.
sure becoming a professor takes some planning and thinking through, and you got to like it. So
Hmm.
that's great.
Yeah.
I feel like you and I know each other quite well, but like I like to ask some sort of basic questions to kind of give an introduction to our audience a little bit. So I'm going to just ask you some sort of this or that questions, and
Okay.
there should be some softballs in here, so don't worry. We'll go easy on the beginning. So, pizza or bagels? What's your choice?
Pizza.
Pizza. Oh, very firm answer. Okay. Beer or wine?
Is gin an option?
It is now. Okay.
I would say wine. I would say
Yeah, wine. Yeah, gin's an option. I did
wine.
not know you were a gin drinker. That's good. Do you have a particular favorite kind of gin you like?
I make a drink called an endless summer, which is
Interesting.
basically a gin and tonic, right? But
Okay.
the people that are in the drink world say no, gin and tonic is a summer drink, right? But
Okay.
if you like it and it's winter time, I mean, what, you can't drink? You can't
Who am I
drink
to
tonic
judge?
in the
Yeah.
winter? So I call it an endless summer.
I see. I see. Is there a variation on the gin and tonic theme, or is it?
It's basically a gin and tonic with changed name.
I love it. I love it. That's perfect. Okay, good. Would you opt for the yellow cab when you're in the city, or are you more of an Uber person?
To tell you the truth, I'm more of a subway person. I
Same.
I like the subways. I don't.
Yeah. I think with the average speed where it is in New York City and all the congestion pricing and everything else, I am very much a subway man myself. I like that we're getting alternate answers here. That's good. Yeah. How
Yeah, I'm
about
going off the menu.
yeah, it's okay. Yeah, we're low key. We're a low key bunch here. Dogs or cats?
I'm gonna go off the menu on that one too. I'm not really a pet person. I had a bird once. The bird only liked me. No one else in the house. Only me. And it got to be a problem. So
You
yeah.
gotta go a little further than that. What kind of problem did a favorite
Oh,
bird
it was
cause?
hissing. You could just see the bird was not happy.
Unless you were around.
Unless I was around, yeah. And if I was out working, right, it knew the sound of the garage door. And as soon as it heard the sound of the garage door and I was coming home, it perked up and it was all happy. But other than that, no, it was a pretty grouchy. I
Okay.
was actually regifted. I gave it to my wife's cousin. He
Oh,
came over. He goes, "Yeah, that's a beautiful bird." I go, "Yeah, you want it?" He took it. He was back next week. Yeah, take your bird back.
yeah, yeah. No backsies. No backsies on the bird.
So not really a pet person.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. And then last one is you're managing in recruiting mode. Would you prefer the phone interview or in person or online?
I always preferred in person. I
Hmm.
felt like I could get more of a read on someone in person.
Got it. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the general consensus is the same, but then you run into the situation where you've got people in lots of locations. Back in the day, we used to fly to a locale and you'd meet. Just the time, effort, and cost of that was really tough, especially if you were in a new market. At least that's my experience. So, but
Right,
I always prefer it as my
right,
go-to.
right.
Thank you. Awesome. So since we're talking about interviewing, like I'll make a smooth transition now. What would you say your most memorable interview experiences that you've had? Like, best, worst, funniest, something along those
Where I was the interviewee or the interviewer.
lines. Whatever you prefer. I think that people can learn from both examples. So I'd
Okay,
love to hear.
so I guess as an interviewee, my most memorable was actually the first one that landed my first job
Hmm.
out of college. Right, the interviewer manager asked to see my transcript
Hmm.
in college, and I actually had an F next to one class. Right, I went to a very competitive school, Stony Brook. Wasn't easy. And I had an F. Of course, the interviewer asked me, "What's with the F, Mr. Levens?"
Yeah.
And I told him what happened. Had to do a project. We were paired up, two people, right? We had to get the project working by the end of the semester. I couldn't get it working, and my partner withdrew from the class halfway through the semester.
Oh no.
So I was left on my own, and I just couldn't finish it. Consequently, got the F. And I said, even though I got the F, it was a big learning experience for me. I
Hmm.
learned from now on, go to the professor, tell them the problem, see if they can work with you. And it was a big learning experience. And I ended up getting the job. I guess the interviewer liked the answer and hired me anyway. So I guess the lesson is, not everything in life is going to go your way. Find a way to turn the tables and use things to your advantage. There may be a way you can do that.
Yeah, and I think the vulnerability you shared is really helps. You were like, "Hey, this is what happened." You were honest. You
Mhm.
didn't start with the position of the the instructor was a jerk. There's none
Right,
of that, right? It was like
right,
because you see that sometimes. People are like, well, I was treated unfairly. Well, but what did you learn? What could have gone differently?
right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
probably my most memorable experience.
And it's got to be so intimidating as a young person when you get into that situation. I've had people tell me, that's where your interviewer can show grace and really give you that. Tell me more, help me understand it. What was the situation? What were the lessons learned?
Right,
So no, that's awesome.
right, that's good.
Any particular any strange questions that might have stood out or particularly unique questions that you've asked or been asked?
I have been, as an interviewee, I have been asked if I own or rent my home, and I don't think that's legal. I don't know if that's legal or not. So that was the strangest question anyone ever asked me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound legal. That's like asking you if your age or are you pregnant?
Yeah,
That's kind of a proxy for wealth, right? I mean, that's kind of,
yeah, that's probably the weirdest thing. As far as an interviewee, with me being the interviewer,
Hmm.
probably, I don't know if you want to call it a weird question, but they
Hmm.
basically said, "How's the staff morale at this place?"
Oh, that's an
And I
interesting
don't
one.
think that really is a good question to ask in an interview.
Hmm.
That means they're trying to judge the culture there,
Hmm.
and asking the manager directly, "What's
Yeah.
the culture at this place?" I don't know if that's such a great idea.
I wonder if he could have, because I get what they were asking, but I wonder if there's a different way you could have come across. Some company cultures are very competitive, some are more collaborative. Like you maybe frame it in a certain way. If
Maybe
that's what you're trying to
frame
get
it
to.
in a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's an odd one to come at you with though. Like,
kind of odd. Maybe the way the person asked it to, like they were trying to confide in me a little bit too much.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Or my current company culture is toxic. What's yours like? we often come across it. Yeah, don't do this at home. That's too funny. Any particular way, that you've had a candidate like really try to like stand out to you? Anything they've done that's been particularly,
The
unique.
most memorable one was the person was being interviewed for software development, but they actually brought an interesting device with them. They had worked at a previous job in a company that manufactured printed circuit boards,
Mm,
where there were elements on both sides of the board, major elements
okay,
on both sides of the printed circuit board, which at the time was pretty rare.
interesting.
He seemed to be all happy about it. Hey, take a look at this. This is my previous job, but I bet you didn't know you could put elements on both sides of them.
Yeah,
And even though it wasn't directly related to the position that he was being considered for,
yeah,
it was fascinating. And I just liked, the way the person brought that up. And
yeah.
we hired him, and he ended up being a very good employee.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. What was the kind of work that you did? I know you mentioned software development, but you had a number of different roles, and over the years, what kind of software development did you all do? I mean, you mentioned the Navy. What were some of the other?
Well, after the Navy job, which was software development, and when I was bored and looking around, right, I listed myself with some headhunters, and the one company on Long Island that wanted me the most wanted me in a quality assurance role. So
Interesting.
I actually went to quality assurance for a number of years, right?
Mm.
And again, just like the first job where the Navy said, don't let anybody go, keep everybody on staff, even though we currently don't have any work for you right now.
Yeah,
It was
still.
it was basically the same situation with this next job. It was an Air Force job, and they said you need to have 24 quality assurance engineers on this project. So what's a company?
24.
24 paid, right? So
Okay.
what is the company going to do if they're given that arrangement? They're going to hire 24 quality assurance people on the project. Ask me if we were busy. That's a
That's not
different.
a relevant question
That's
when
not a
when the
relevant question. The contract says there have to be 24 people on the project. So the
okay.
company got paid. But things like this are not uncommon
Really?
in the industry. Yeah.
Was this Grumman back in the day, like the
It
Long Island
wasn't. It
contracting?
wasn't Grumman. It wasn't
Okay.
Grumman.
Okay,
It
that's
was a
fine.
company that was on
Yeah.
Comac Road in Deer
Okay.
Park. They kind of scaled back a while
I see.
after a while.
Okay, you don't have to say anything else. I'm fascinated by by this model because a lot of my experience has been in building software as well, or different roles. A lot of consulting work, but it was typically, I guess, in financial services that was a bit more competitive.
Mhm.
So there was not a lot of hire 24 people. It's more
Right.
like hire one guy and give him 24 people's worth of work.
Well, yeah. In the
Yeah.
commercial industry, it could be a lot different.
Yeah. Any particular like languages of note? I'm sure you've seen the progression from, over the years, like I have, of language changes
Uh,
and environment, the whole experience.
yeah, this will be surprising and maybe a little rare. When I got hired for my first commercial job in the financial industry, I worked in a role called configuration management at the
Yeah,
time.
sure.
And I was hired by the executive VP. In the interview, the executive VP goes, Joe, we have 500,000 lines of ADA code and it's out of control. He says, we have a bunch of cowboys that are doing
Ada.
500,000 lines of ADA, ADA, which was an interesting language. It had this concept of a rendezvous where you can actually target some execution to certain processors. And
Okay,
if
like
you
load
know
balancing.
load balancing, and then a rendezvous would be okay, the processing of each individual strand finished, and now you could merge them and continue. So it was an interesting 500,000 lines of ADA code, and the executive VP had some doubts that the developers were doing everything according to plan. So I had to help bring the reins in
Interesting.
and ensure that the developers were only changing and writing code they were supposed to be changing.
Yeah, that's fast. So Ada, if I remember correctly, was that a natural language? Am I thinking of something different?
Not really. I mean, it's a high level programming language. I did
Okay.
have C, C++, Java, all those,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
but it was not very commonly used. I was very
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah. I remember there were some, when earlier in my career, I did some work at IBM, and there were some very IBM specific, languages that they tried and didn't necessarily. I don't know if you remember APL. Do you remember?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that was wild. All symbols. You had a whole special
Yeah.
keyboard. It was wild.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Now I'm involved mostly now with Python. Python seems to be
Okay.
gaining more and more ground.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm teaching at
that's cool.
college, as well as HTML and SQL
Sure.
and all that fun stuff.
Do you find yourself engaging at all with like any AI elements in the coursework? Or there's all the code generation stuff and all those. There's a lot of attention on that.
There's a lot of it going on. The schools don't allow it,
Mm,
right? But there's a lot of it going on. There's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons. My son dabbles in software development and he's a pilot. And he
mm,
wrote some software to help him decide every month his schedule, which is kind
mm.
of complicated. You have to look and see what flights are
Oh yeah.
available and all this stuff. So he actually wrote some pretty complicated software to figure all that out. And he said he used AI to do some of it. I go, oh yeah? How much did AI write? And how much did you write? Any guesses as to what he said? 75% AI, 25% writing and just checking to make sure the
Checking.
AI.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's incredible.
That's
But
incredible.
I mean, there's pros and cons of it. On one hand, you get the code generated a lot quicker. All right, there may be more of a need to test it, but you get the code generated a lot quicker.
Hmm.
On the other hand, companies might be apprehensive. You're putting server names, you're putting passwords or whatever in the code. I don't know about that. And schools discourage it.
Sure.
So
Yeah, this is it's an interesting time we're in. I will say. I mean, I also have dabbled. I built a couple of AI studio, and I'm required by law to use Google products. No, I'm only kidding. No, it's interesting. I bounce between Claude. I was using Claude quite a bit, and then I've switched to Gemini, and I'll switch back and forth on my personal projects. But at work, obviously, we're using we're eating our own dog food, as the expression goes. But it's fascinating how fast you can go from idea to deployment. I literally built this app. I really don't call it an app. It's a web app, right? So it runs in the browser. But I'm colorblind and I use it to, I'm like, what would be really interesting? I couldn't, I don't know if I might have mentioned this in another podcast. So for those of you who heard it again, sorry, I'll just going to repeat myself once, probably twice because of my age. But anyway, the app you could point the camera at a whatever, and it basically takes a picture of it and then tells you what color it is. And I lined it up to the Crayola boxes, right? So I had, because when I was a kid, I could pick every color out of the 8-color box. That was no problem. 16 got a little dicey, but I could still get them all. 128 colors. When you start calling things like salmon and you know, I don't know, petunia a color, that's not a color. Those are flowers and fish, right? So, but it worked. It was incredibly easy. And what I think what Google had done that I struggled with Claude was you press a button, deploy to cloud. I give them my credit card and it runs in a cloud instance, and I just give you the URL and it runs in your phone. It's like boom, it was incredibly easy.
right,
So
yeah,
yeah, so that's been my experience. But then I tried doing something similar with literally with for the podcast. I've built that. Oh, you played with it, you said, right? The thehiregroundpodcast.com website. It works great in AI Studio because there's no database connected to it. But then if Joe logs in and does something, and then Tom logs in and does something, there's no state. So I need to connect it to a database. So one of my friends are helping me with the
yeah,
database work.
yeah.
I'm
No, I
embarrassed.
haven't used it. I've had some, like, I've been teaching the IT class now for about 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
And AI only came about in the last 4 or so. So I've been
Yeah.
feeding it in some problems that I developed. These were workshops and like exercises I had developed before AI.
Yeah.
I fed them into AI just to see what the
Well,
answers were.
yeah.
I was really impressed. Some of them I couldn't have given a better answer myself, and I was the one who wrote the exercise.
I know, right?
Crazy.
It's crazy.
But you can't rely on it completely. I do have some questions and some quizzes in my class. AI is actually going to give you the wrong answer,
Oh, nice. I
and,
like that.
I've caught about half my class all with the
Interesting.
same exact wrong answer.
That's
And
yeah. So that's good. That's
I
good.
had
That's
to
good.
have a little bit of a talk to some of my students, but
Yeah. As a gentle reminder, remember we said about not taking help from the agents and whatnot. Interesting. So that link brings me to a question. I'm sure in your past life you've had somebody, let's say, wasn't entirely truthful on an interview. Have you ever had any experiences where they've done something, they've said something, you call them on it, or you didn't feel comfortable with their answer?
I've never really had an instance where I actually thought an interviewee was lying.
Hmm.
Never really had that. I've had a few cases where they were technically describing something and they got the facts wrong.
Hmm.
That's not really lying. That's just a
Right.
mistake, right?
Just a mistake.
But I am aware of one case that happened with one of my colleagues.
Hmm.
They actually went ahead and extended an offer to someone, and then they did the background check and found out the person was lying about their degree. They did not have the degree that was listed on the
That they
resume,
claimed. Wow.
and they rescinded the offer.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing regarding like deceit
Deceit.
that I have ever seen. Yeah,
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's a tough one.
that's a tough one.
Yeah, it's hard because, like you said, we want to give our candidates the benefit of the doubt, right? And at least I believe that people are coming in with good intent, but then there's those cases where they're clearly wrong. In that situation, do you call them on it? Do you ask? I've got a different experience. How do you handle that situation yourself?
When I
Well, let's say maybe it's not an interview. Maybe you've got an employee that's asserting something that is patently untrue, but it's not like a lie necessarily. They're just wrong. What's your style for handling those types of situations?
It goes back to that old saying, pick your battles. If it's small potatoes, I'm not going to worry about it. If it's something important, obviously, we're going to need to make a correction there. I kind of like to be a very approachable manager when I manage people. I find that if you treat your employees very well, you have reasonable expectations, you speak clearly, that very often is reciprocated.
Yes, I agree with that.
And you don't really get people who are trying to,
Get over on you.
yeah, that's how I try to work it.
Hmm.
So,
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think that's do unto others as you would have them do unto you kind of model.
I have a
Yeah.
little, I wonder if I can share my screen. Maybe I can draw something. I have a little
Yeah.
idea on my approach to management when I bring people in. You
I
think,
would love that.
you think I
Yeah.
can try that? Do I,
I support you fully. I
do I
have no
just,
idea if you can do it.
do I
I
just
don't know, but
say
let's go.
share screen? I guess I can just say,
Yeah.
let me try it. I call this the World War II or dictatorship type of management style. It's still
Okay.
being used by some managers these days, where you have a manager and the manager basically just tells the employees what to do.
Yep.
Right? So the next one would be here's the manager, and you have employees like this. Sorry, and it looks like a cartoon. I'm a terrible drawer, and I'm using
No.
which is about as primitive as you can possibly get. But here's the employees, right? And the employees basically interact with each other, right? Like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then they all also interact with the managers. So it's kind of like this, right? Where the employees actually talk to each other as well, and the managers in the middle, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's like what I think is a better way. But then I actually think the best way is I'm sure you've heard the concept of the working manager, right? Where the manager actually does some of the work.
Yep.
And I'd like to draw that like this, where it's just a team of people and
Mm.
they all work together and communicate well together. One happens to be the manager.
Mm.
But as you can see, the manager is doing about as much work as the other employees.
Yep.
And I find that in that kind of a situation, um, the team just seems to get along better, I think. There's better communication. And also, the manager is in a position to know more about what's going on since they're
Sure.
doing some of the work. They're not totally cut off.
It makes sense.
So,
Yeah, I love that. I like that. I like that last model. I think we adopt a similar one. My managerial responsibilities now. It's interesting. Like I've had two different sets of types of experiences. I would say as a manager, I've been managing teams for a long time. I like your model. I like the work might be different, but we're all working together, right? I think
mhm.
that makes a ton of sense. The model now is my managerial experience is now more people management. performance reviews and
Mhm.
more advisory, dealing with issues. It's less directing their individual work. So that works. That lines up with your model quite nicely. I have my responsibilities, they have theirs. I'd like to bring more of us on the same page, but sometimes that doesn't line up. There's a focus on privacy over here, and I'm working on regulations over there. But
Mhm.
I like the model. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's
Yeah.
super helpful. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those. It's a very studied area. I've heard a term. I don't know if you've heard the term servant leadership or servant management, something like that. I like that framework where my job is to help you be successful
Mhm.
at your role. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
like the approach.
Yeah.
But nice. How do you from a manager's perspective? What are some of the ways that you help course correct someone who's, let's say, off track or who's maybe not meeting expectations?
Yeah, it actually hasn't happened all that much to me, Tom. Like I said,
Really?
if you are pretty reasonable with your expectations, right? You know what's going on, and you're nice.
No, that's great.
It doesn't happen all that often. Obviously, it is going to happen once in a while.
Of
You would have to
course.
call
Yeah.
them into the office or a conference room and very nicely say,
This
not
happened.
really getting done what needs to get done. This is what we need to do. A few times we had to write a performance improvement plan
Sure.
and things like that.
Yeah. Those are never fun. That's never fun.
No, they're never fun. And I don't think I've ever experienced a case where we had to go as far as write a performance improvement plan and the person actually improved and remained on the team.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah. I think I've shared that experience. Generally, enough of a signal to the employee that you're not, expectations are not aligned with your outcomes, right?
Mm,
And the reality, frankly, at least in my shared, I think we have very similar experiences. My hope is that the employee understands that there's a mismatch between the expectations and what the outcomes are, and can course correct for in the future. It's a lot of times maybe they're in the wrong job. Maybe they lack the skills. Maybe they don't have the abilities to do this. Maybe the expectations are wrong for what they're brought in to do. I think there's a variety of reasons.
mhm,
But at the end of the day, the lesson really is for the manager, but more for the employee, right? I think
mhm.
it's telling how an organization, how compassionate the organization is, and how the organization works through the experience, frankly.
Yeah,
So
yeah, all of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely tough. You've covered quite a few characteristics that you would describe as like characteristics of a good manager, right? Is the compassion aspect, communication. Are there any other items you'd like to maybe call out that you'd say or make a good manager, or lessons you've maybe learned from some of your managers over the years?
The only other thing that comes to mind, particularly with as it relates to hiring, like hiring people,
Oh, it could be hiring, it could be post, but
yeah,
maybe yeah.
I kind of have a pretty strong reliance on gut feel. I
Oh,
try
interesting.
to read the person, their personality. An interview to me is more than just trying to assess how much the person knows.
Mm,
It's about who this person is and what they're
yeah,
like.
yeah,
If it's going to be an office environment, you want to be able to get along with this person, right? I
100%.
would easily sacrifice a few limitations on the tech side and the knowledge side if the person seems to be a person I can definitely work with, as opposed to someone who's like an expert but is not very approachable.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
makes for
Yeah.
kind of a stressful situation. There was just something interesting on the news last night. They did a study where they said if you have a person that stresses you out in life, take 8 months off your life. That's what the article, this study was all about.
I don't know about that. I'd be dead by now.
Maybe that, right? So I have worked with some people that have stressed me out. It was not a comfortable experience, but
Interesting. That's
yeah.
interesting. I'd like to dig into that study because I probably should be dead. So, yeah, I do think that, the hard part, you see, it's funny because tech is such a quantitative field that we're in, the
Mhm.
technology field. You've moved from very quantitative to very qualitative in the fine arts. What you're doing is completely not in that space. I don't know how, like, I don't know how you teach someone gut feel, like that's a,
Yeah.
or how do you measure it? Right? How do you
I
quantify? It's hard.
It's hard. It's more like a social thing than anything
Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah.
I guess it's hard. Maybe it comes with years of experience. I
Could
don't
be.
know. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah. I would say the one test we used to do back in the day was the airplane test. Sorry, the airport test. Like, okay, after the interview, you've had the conversations, they've met the team or the interviews, right? Ask yourself, how would you feel if you got stuck with this person in an airport for 6 hours because your flight was canceled?
That's
And that was
interesting.
like, okay, yeah. Am I going to lose that 8 months out of my life? That was one we used to
That's a
we
good
used to
question.
do. Or the beer. The other one was the more casual one. Was like, would you go for a beer with this
Would
person?
you,
That to me is not everyone. Like that. That's a little harder. But I like the situation where you're stuck, and then like, are you
no,
going to be
that's
like,
a good.
oh man,
That's a good one too. That's a good one.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
The one
yeah.
thing that you could fall short on if you rely on gut feel and everything else, um, is it's hard to pick up like a trait of laziness. Some people are just
Mm,
they're just outright lazy, whether or not they're motivated or whether they're just naturally lazy.
mm.
Hard to pick up, I think, in an interview. You may not find that until the person is working in the
Yeah,
company for weeks or a few months, and then find out that they could really be working a little harder than they
yeah,
really
yeah,
are. It's hard to
yeah.
pick that up in an interview.
Definitely. Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, and a lot of times the overachievements that are listed on the resume are, stretches, maybe
Mm,
little exaggerations.
hmm
Yeah,
hmm
interesting.
hmm
Now, how has your style changed over the years in terms of your either your interviewing style, your managerial style? We start out one way, but typically morph over time. How would you describe your evolution?
I don't think my style changed much. I just think that over the years, I might have had grown a shorter fuse
Oh, really?
when it comes to maybe if the interviewee is overly chatty, right? Or if
Mm,
they were a little late, even by 5 minutes. Or
mm,
so, I mean, as you get older, as you probably know, you get busier, right?
yeah, for
To the
sure.
point where you can't really do everything that you have to do. You have to
Yeah.
set priorities, and every minute, literally every minute counts. And if I feel that the interviewee is occupying too much of my time, that might turn me off. Whereas when I was younger and just first started out interviewing, I don't think that would have bothered me.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I to this day, I think of this one gentleman who, we had a very short period of time, maybe 35, 40 minutes, for the conversation. And I think my opening question was just tell me a little bit about yourself, which, you can do in 2 minutes. Even 5 minutes is fine. When we hit minute 30, I realized, yeah, this is this. We don't have a match.
Yeah,
Like we just don't have a match. It's
right.
okay. Maybe you should consider something like in an oratory type of role,
That's funny.
because
That's funny.
because this ain't working here. This ain't
Right.
working.
Yeah, I've had
Uh,
that happen. I've had that happen.
yeah, it's too funny.
So,
Did you do tech screenings or, you know, sometimes they'll do like those, tests, or you give them like problems to solve as part of your interview process. Do you ever go into any of those?
most of my management roles were in the office, so they just had candidates come into the
Just kind
office.
of come in.
I think nowadays it's very, very common to have like a phone screening interview, even a video
Yeah.
interview before they invite you into the office or go any further,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's very, very common now these days.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
Yeah. And a lot of the interviewing is done online. In fact,
right.
one of my friends had described in one of the previous podcasts about identity, matching the person's identity between, okay, we interviewed them. They were looking for a consulting role. And turns out that the person who showed up for the job wasn't the person they
Oh
interviewed.
man. Oh wow.
Could you imagine?
That's yeah. No, I know one common practice some of my students tell me as they go for interviews is they would sign up for this AI assisted first interview where you actually have your camera on video.
Hmm.
There's no real person at the other end, and it records everything and then sends it to somebody in their human resource department that watches the video. And that's how they decide whether or not that first pass succeeds or not. I don't know. Was I clear in describing that?
Yeah, yeah. My friend Sarah had mentioned that she was interviewed twice by machines.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds like a very similar experience where you've got a chat bot recording and asking you questions, you answer the question, and then
And
it
you're
goes
on
in.
video.
Yeah,
And
you're
you're
on
on
video.
video.
Yeah, that makes me very uncomfortable. Right. Because there's no human connection. It's one thing to have like, a conversation online like this. You and I know each other. So we have a natural rapport. So you need to give a little extra time to have the rapport.
Hmm
built up, but there's zero rapport with the machine.
Right.
That doesn't feel like you're going to get really the best of the candidate, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know how I would
There's
handle that.
probably open-ended questions like, please take 2 minutes and describe yourself, something like that.
Sure,
And they
sure,
want
sure,
to
sure.
see how
Yeah,
you communicate and what you say,
yeah.
things like that.
Interesting. So tell me a bit about how you made your transition from the technology space, from leading software, leading IT projects, and moving into the, like, you started your, obviously you're writing a lot earlier, but then when you actually made that transition, what was that like?
Well, like I said, I had the luxury of my wife working full time, right? So I could have basically afford to do this,
I
right?
see.
And I basically left my last job without any concrete offer to do anything else. And I just explored teaching opportunities at different colleges.
Last your final set of work was contract. Was it contract work basically, or
No, it was a full time job. It was actually a full time job. It was a small company. It was an interesting job. It was for sports statistics collection. It was a small little company with no home office. We all worked from home. We
interesting?
communicated by instant messenger and we got the job done. So I worked for about 3 years with a team of about 10 people. I didn't even know what they looked like. Didn't even know what they looked like.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Seriously?
And we got the job done. It was a pretty successful product, and they kind of had poor vision going forward. They wanted to expand into other sports and spent a lot of money foolishly, and you can tell what kind of
What
happened.
happened next? I see. Yeah,
So I
good.
had left that job with no concrete
What do I
job
do next?
lined
Yeah.
up. But I was 58, and I was saying to myself, oh, maybe it's time I just move on. My wife's working, she's got a good job. Let's
Yeah.
see what I can get that I actually would like. And not
Yeah.
to say
Yeah.
this job I didn't like. It wasn't so bad.
Well, there's a
Previous jobs I worked as a contractor, you probably know the company, Tom.
yes. Yeah, I am familiar. Yeah.
I worked there for a good 2 or 3 years on 4 different projects.
Okay.
And I can honestly say 2 of the projects were probably 2 of the best projects I ever worked on.
Oh, that's so great to hear.
But then the other 2 projects were
You
absolutely the 2 worst projects I was on in my entire life.
so you had the gamut. You had the
So
0 and 180 degrees.
the 2 extremes, Tom, the
That's
two
so
extremes, which
wild.
I might not be uncommon for like contractor type jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting you frame it that way because there was not a lot in the middle.
There was not a lot in the middle, right?
And sometimes projects were great or oh my god, what are we doing?
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But
And pretty
I
accurate.
think the 2 that weren't good were enough to tell me, maybe it's
Maybe don't
time
want to.
I need to look for something that I actually like to do.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I just applied. I used Indeed and I applied as an adjunct, right, part time. And one state college picked me up the next semester. So I just started working there
That's
and I
amazing.
went for my MFA and Stony Brook had me teach and I just kept going from there.
And I'm gonna assert that you're happier now.
Much happier, much
Okay.
happier. I have about
Yeah.
100 students this semester in all my classes,
Whoa,
but
that's a ton.
yeah, much happier.
I'm glad. Oh, I'm so happy for you. That's great. Yeah, and I think what you demonstrated in your experience, at least from my vantage point, is you kind of had that, that trajectory. You thought about what do I want to be when I grow up, and it sounds like you've finally grown up.
Well, it's always good to have a vision, I think,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You need to put it in perspective. Like I said, the adjunct job pays a lot less than a permanent full-time job in IT.
Yeah.
But it's always good to have something on the horizon and
On the horizon.
work
Yeah, start
toward
thinking
it.
about that. Yeah. That's great. So what advice would you give a younger Joe Levens? What would you say to
Younger
yourself?
Joe, what advice would I give?
Yeah.
I would say maybe I could have been a little more confident in what I did
Okay.
and believed a little more in the work that I did. Confidence is important. Confidence
Yeah.
is really important to be successful.
Hmm.
So that's one thing. Another thing is to strike a balance between what you need to do and
Hmm.
what you want to do. Right? You have to strike a balance. Um, and cover both sides of that. I think you're going to be miserable if you are always focused on what you need to do and don't give any attention to what you want to do. So that's important too. And I guess another thing would be never to buy a 2008 GMC Acadia.
This sounds like very personal. Hey, say more about the 2008 GMC
You
Acadia.
know, you don't want to be driving a 2008 GMC Acadia in the rain, making a tight turn when the power steering decides to quit. You don't want to do that, right?
Oh boy.
Especially when the car is still under warranty.
Boy.
So no. Since then, I've bought a Mini Cooper. I've had it 22 years. It just died on me last year. 22 years with minimal problems. It was a stick shift, and I had to change the clutch on it, which, 22 years,
That's a
obviously.
long.
But that car was a very well built car. So I just bought a new one, and we'll see how long this one lasts. It's funny. The dealer goes, "I'll see you in another 20."
That's hilarious. Yeah, if you yeah, that's I miss my coupe. Yeah, we were a Cooper family, and I don't have a car now. I don't need a car. I'm a subway. I'm like we said earlier. I'm a
There,
subway guy.
there you go.
I'm at public transportation, but I do miss my coupe. I do know my first coupe. I forget how many years I had her. She was not 22. Letting your kids deliver pizzas on a stick shift in town, not conducive to a long life for your clutch, like you said. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, how come second gear is just so difficult? Well, we stopped using it. What? When were you going to tell me this? Like,
Yeah, it happens.
awesome.
It happens.
It does happen. No, that's great. And I will make sure I add to my list of lessons learned in life about the 2008.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, Joe, I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate you taking time out of your spring break. So thank you for that. I know like that's precious time. That's non-working time. So thank you for joining me
no
and us on
problem.
the
No
podcast.
problem,
I
Tom. Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for having me. Thank you for taking time out to interview me. It was a
It's
pleasure.
truly mine. Truly mine. Thank you, sir. And I look forward to actually getting us all together soon.
Very good. It's very good.
Take care, Joe.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.